And so today's presentation, a couple of things just to kind of frame stuff for everybody. How I like to do these presentations is to try to provide as much valuable take home stuff for you. So a lot of it is hopefully actionable items you guys can do right away today with your team. We have two topics kind of blended into today's presentation: complex sales and onboarding. So I'll be covering two sides of the equation there. And then I will probably do about 10, 12 slides, kind of talk candidly about things, quite a bit of stats information, best practices, stuff like that. And then I will jump out at the end to kind of show you, for a lot of our clients who are in accounting, financial services, really a lot of what I'm talking about here kind of carries over to really all of our professional services clients a lot of the times. But so just so you know, so at the end, there will be a little bit of a show and tell just to kind of bring some of the concepts to life. So again, appreciate everybody's time. Again, just recap, everything will be sent to everybody again today for facilitation internally, and I will include additional resources that are already on our site. So appreciate the time. Let's get into it. So accounting firms, obviously you guys know your industry. There's a lot of consolidation, a lot of things going on, a lot of competition, all sorts of things really attacking the industry. And so we have many clients in this space, so we understand it pretty in depthly. So we're going to kind of walk through some elements here. So let's get started. So move my thing here. There we go. All right, so setting the stage, right? So again, we're covering kind of two topics here. From a 30,000 foot, I should frame a little bit more because maybe some of you don't know who we are. So we have an industry leading product called Engage. Engage is heavily used by our clients for complex sales, multiple stakeholder consensus decision making, that kind of ecosystem, complex sales. And then we're also heavily used for onboarding, getting those clients successfully into your enterprise. And then also a lot of our clients use us for current customer nurturing, cross-selling, which also happens quite a bit in the accounting/financial services world, because they come in for a problem typically, or one thing, tax, and then you now are going to cross sell them a whole lot of other services to them. So I'll kind of walk through those heavily on the first two, the complex sale and the onboarding, because that's the real high risk and challenging area for many of our clients today. So kind of framing, I always like kind of the things are important. The devil is in the details. And so complex sales, big problem, acquiring new clients, challenge for a lot of accounting firms, because quite frankly, a lot of them were not designed or built for selling. And so you have partners who are selling or out there getting relationships and these types of things. And so how do you provide them, in essence, a playbook on how to properly sell the firm, and then of course onboard their new clients into it, right? That's just the reality of it. So let's own it and let's figure out a solution to that. Also, there's a lot of churn in accounting. I'm speaking to the choir here, and that churn either comes in the form of they literally leave you, or they only do one thing with you and they're out contracting with others to do other things, right? So there's always the balance there. And we also know that the onboarding process itself is really, really important, especially when you're bringing on business clients, right? Clients of yours that own entities, multiple businesses, etc. Like the onboarding experiences, we always joke, whatever that commercial is, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Like that's really how it feels. And so it's really, really critical, because you've sold them something high level, and then you also are now onboarding them. And if those don't match, the experience does not match, it can be very problematic, because they're making some predictions based on how they felt about that sale and onboarding process, that they then equate to how good of a partner will you be. Because at the end of the day, with great respect, accounting services, a lot of these services, they are commoditized, right? And so now your challenge in battle is differentiation of experience and differentiation of what you bring to the table from a consulting perspective and trust perspective, right? So I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys obviously, I assume, know that. So it is an arms race in a sense of making sure that the customer's experience is on par with other things they experience in their lives. I always joke, native New Yorker, I always joke, if I wanted to order a pepperoni pie right now, I literally can order that, see it being made, see it being put into a box, watch the car get loaded, and literally watch the car come to my house and get a picture of it on my front step for a $15 transaction, right? So I sold something and now I'm being onboarded. Obviously, a little bit of a metaphor there, right? But you know what I'm getting at. The actual experience is great. Well, why should accounting firms, when they're onboarding clients, and I have had to go through this, it's painful. And so how do you not make it painful, right? So the sizzle, the sell, and then obviously the onboarding. So that's a lot of the stuff we're going to be covering today. 5 of the challenges we're going to talk about first, then 5 high-level solutions, actionable items around that, and then I'll lift the curtain a little bit and just show you kind of a very standard example of this, which helps you kind of connect all the dots here, right, team? Well, let's rock. So for some reason, there we go. So I kind of alluded to this a little bit. This actual slide is in every single presentation I think we've ever done in the 20 some odd years of this hustle. And why it's important is it's just getting worse every single time. And so what's going on is, obviously, in any kind of B2B transaction, I'm primarily not talking here, and you probably could guess that, personal taxes and kind of that kind. You can. I'm not saying you can't leverage our platform, but we're primarily more in that B2B ecosystem, where on the left hand side you got a ton of folks, and on the right hand side you got a ton of owners and multiple stakeholders, and it's just a crap ton of things are going on. One, if you're selling, you got multiple partners that need to agree to move with you guys. Typically a triple bid environment. 85% of the sale is done without you in the room, so you can't rely on you selling. And as much as you think, oh, I have a good relationship with that person, the other 2 partners also have relationships with other people, and so there's a lot of competition for business there. So in the sales process, that's no doubt. Obviously, once you get the client, onboarding them into your firm, clearly there's a lot of stuff going there. So it's a multiplier effect. You just got a crap ton of people involved in everything. So how do you create a centralized environment to create visibility and processes around this, especially if the partners are actively selling? So you got, I'll keep it simple, 10 partners. Each one of them is onboarding clients differently, can create kind of a lot of challenges, and maybe even selling differently. So we'll kind of go through those things, but ultimately it's a people and a process challenge, right? Just a lot of stuff going on. Preaching to the choir, I think you guys know. So this environment is out there. So how do we attack that problem specifically from accounting? So lengthy sales. So it's the classic, again, depending on your firm. If your firm has a consistent outreach person, or, because nobody likes to call it sales, but outreach or community advisor or whatever that is, then you might have a dedicated person out there hunting active business. Majority, even in huge firms, majority of it is partner led. And so in those, it kind of peaks and valleys selling, depending on if the partners are busy or not. So that's one big dangerous thing you need to stop, right? You got to get consistency of sales engagement, get everything centralized, and create that visibility. There's then also um, a lot of people who can't move right now to your firm because they're actively engaged with others. So the sales cycle, a lot of times in accounting, yes, it's 120 days is the average sales cycle, but you also have quite a bit of what we call fat funnel. If everybody remembers, the, a sales funnel is like a inverted triangle, right? What we see typically in a lot of professional services groups, including accounting, is we call a fat funnel, which it gets really fat at a certain point because a lot of people just literally can't move now. They're underneath current contracts, or they're very busy, or they're being acquired. I mean, you name it, you know better. Those types of things. So how do you create a good selling environment and relationship environment for that continuous pipeline to which you need? And so these are kind of some of the key points in a challenge that are real, for real. I sound like California surfer, but for real. That's what's going on here. So you're probably seeing this with your environment. Um, the second one is misaligned expectations. First one was primarily aligned for the sales ecosystem. The second one is actually on both sides of the equation, the complex sale and the complex onboarding, or getting them onboarded, right? And so these are things that create, obviously, the frustrations, right? Um, And so these are things obviously to take into consideration. These are some of the things you're probably frustrated about now. We'll come up with solutions here in a second, but a lot are frustrated during one, it's the sales experience might have been great because I'm directly working with the partner, and then I'm handed off to the admin team or some other team and it's just disconnected. I'm restating everything again. Very, very frustrating, giving a hint as to what's coming from a solution perspective, kind of give you some strategy ideas and how you work with your teams. Um, and really, really, really trying to get, as you can see, the bottom one is a lot more value for the average client in your org, which is really what we're about. So part of the fear set that happens and why this equates to the challenges is I always say there's two sides of the coin. And we jokingly say in sales, okay, sales, but then there's a whole other side of that, right? And so people sometimes are very uncomfortable when they're being sold or they really don't understand. I'm just giving you kind of the things like fear of technical integration challenges, right? Well, does your firm integrate with QuickBooks and other things? Like, are you going to make it a real pain in the butt for me to work with you or to Peachtree or whatever? Right. Like these are the challenges. So there's obvious things during the sales process, and there are obvious things during the onboarding process, but ultimately there's a lot of hidden fears that the customer is thinking and not just on your side. It makes sense. Like these are the things that when you're selling, kill the deal and you're like, I don't know why we didn't get firm DEF or whatever client ABC. It's probably lying in one of these areas. Then where the frustration comes during the actual onboarding typically comes from this side of missed expectations and misalignment. For instance, number one thing we always joke with accounting is if your process right now is writing an email to the customer with 14 bullet points in it of things you need from the customer, you know what's coming back. Partial data and information for the next 19 days, and very, very confusing experience because they're sending you bullet point 2 and 5 only, not one. I sent you the wrong year. It's the wrong articles of the organization, right? Like there's no structure and visibility to the process. So this bowling ball starts to kind of roll and creates a lot of frustration downstream. And quite frankly, it's two-sided, and I'm going to get into that here, which is the data collection challenge. So obviously accounting working in obviously B2B, like for instance in our portfolio we are like 10 products and companies. Our own enterprise is 10 different products and companies. So there literally are 10 different LLCs, softwares, all sorts of leadership teams. Like we're very complicated organization and big breadth in a lot of service areas. And so that process alone, there's a lot of documentation, a lot of expectations, hybrids of C Corps, LLCs, right? And so for each of the types, nonprofit, like so around these, it's getting the right information and doing that in an efficient way, not only for the client to do that, but also for you guys to process and get them set up. So the joke of the email with the 7 bullet points, quite frankly, is how a lot of people come to us on this kind of services because they're like, that's how we're doing it now, and it's just not working for us. It's not at scale, and it's a big challenge because of just the wasting of time. There's just so much energy on a relative size client. Forget about a larger client that really burns a lot of the resources and time on your team. And I don't think I have to do the math of you guys mostly are billing hours, so you know how much that adds up, and we'll get into that little ROI here in a little bit. So data collection, chaos, stuff all over the place, no current status, big challenge for many accounting firms. I'm not saying it's yours, but there's a lot. So the domino effect of that bad data basically then puts you into like this challenge set. So you got bad data, you got messed up process or lack thereof, then you get a frustrated customer. Every time I look at this, I think that's Chef Boyardee, but you got a frustrated customer, right? And then you got burnt out teams, right? So it's a double whammy. And so you got to help solve the problem because it's not only customers are getting mad, your own team is getting frustrated because you're like, this is not healthy. Clearly, this is a simple image, but lost revenue, right? Lost opportunity and or loss of talent on your own team, which great talent or good talent is very hard to find. And you're probably hoping you're doing more of these and you're not just onboarding, once one client a year, you're looking for better ways of doing that, right? So you got to be careful there, because just the data alone, and I can say from the other side of the equation, again, onboarding into accounting firms in many of our entities, it's a very frustrating process, because many a times it's not laid out, clear expectations, clear timing. Why are we providing this, right? Like, just all sorts of things. So we always like to say in onboarding, half of the battle literally is education. The why. Why do we need to provide this? What is this going to be used for? And making sure we understand to get you the right data the first time around, instead of looping and looping and looping and looping. Especially if you're dealing with, call it mid-cap companies, where maybe they have CFOs or accounting teams, but also when you're doing partner, so you're onboarding a very successful HVAC firm or something of that nature, you're more than likely dealing with and working with the actual ownership group, right? The actual founders, etc. So you want to put them teed up for success there. So just some nuggets of knowledge there that we know, and that all correlates with the next. It's like, I've done this before, like somehow I know the problems. But the other one is communication. So that's always a big challenge, of expectations, of knowing where we're at. We call it communication breakdowns. I would do comma slash visibility. Where are we at in the process? Keeping the customer up to date, right? And sometimes, again, that's not only the person you're doing it with, it might be other members of their team, again, like the founder or other folks. Depending on the firm size, we see a lot of money loss there. It was kind of surprising to us as we kind of got into the level of details. But I know historically, for the entire user base of our platform, we see about 30% efficiency on your side, so the selling side and the onboarder side, which is a huge amount of savings, obviously. And then same thing on the client side. Obviously, we reduce a crap ton of hours, because of the structured processes that are put in place. But all of this is related to the bottom line. At the end of the day, the sales process and the onboarding process needs to be kind of programmatically laid out, and then of course having the right touch points, whether some of those are automated, so that you're moving the things along, or you're prompted to do it. And that's what we talk about, experiences. Um, so the last one of the challenges, and then we're going to get into kind of some things you can literally start to do later today if you're onboarding, or even selling, either side. Um, so again, we talked about this, the retention risk. So for it's the old, bear with, I know this really isn't the core of the presentation for you guys into hardcore numbers, but CAC, which is known as customer acquisition cost, right? So how much does it cost your firm to get a new customer? Typically in accounting firms, that's a pretty high number, because a lot of the sale is partner led. So that CAC is very, very high, meaning, depending on the client size and what services they're buying from you, in many cases you can be upside down on that client, either year one, maybe even, yeah, probably year one, give or take. Your bill rates, depends what they sign up for, but you know what I'm saying. So it's very expensive for you to get new clients, and so you don't want to lose those new clients very, very quickly. And unfortunately, for a lot of accounting firms, people can come in for one specific problem to AKA test you, right? And see how you are, and see if you're, because a lot of times accountants, it's kind of like another member of the family, right? Or another member of your leadership team. So you want to kind of get the relationship right. And sometimes it's just not right. But obviously they might be coming in for one specific opportunity and challenge. And if that doesn't go good, then 90 to 120 days are out. So it's a high risk process. And so just kind of something to consider. There's double whammies there. It's the customer acquisition cost, and obviously improving the onboarding so that they feel like they could do more business with you. Also, I'm going to talk about this. Well, I'll wait. But in the solution section, like, people think of onboarding as just onboarding, right? Like, I'm getting the customer in. One of the things we focus with all of our clients, forget about just accounting, software companies, whatever, governments, we have all sorts of clientele we have, is we consider onboarding cross-selling. So our assumption is you're going to do onboarding correctly with us. But what you're going to do is understand the profile of your customer even more so, where their bleeding points are, where their opportunities are, these types of things. And by the end of the onboarding experience and a quick win within 30 to 90 days for them, quick win, showing your value, you already should be injecting the cross-selling techniques based on the learning you just did and their need set that they've kind of said, these are my struggle areas, right? So we always look at onboarding. Clearly, our expectation is you're going to run it right with us, and then you're going to capitalize on this even more so to get cross-selling involved, which again, customer acquisition costs. What we're really chasing here is the LTV, lifetime value of the customer, right? So you don't want to get the customer just for tax. You want consulting, you want insurance, you want whatever else, you want to, the private tax work for the partners, right? Like the things just start to multiply out, but that all starts with the first trust and then cross-selling all of those pretty quickly. Maybe I jumped the shark on that a little bit, but that's how we look at onboarding, because it's the relationship and the trust and driving opportunity. So on the sales side, so this we're now into solution. I call it strategy here. So as you're looking at your firm from the sales side, it's basically just standardizing a lot of things and creating a lot of what we call mutual plans. So when you're selling somebody, especially B2B, yes, you're building trust and relationship. I'll show you here at the end. We like to establish with our partners basically what does our sales process look like, so there's visibility to that process. What are the expectations? It's mutual, my firm and your accounting firm, because we are going to be intertwined, right? It's a mutual thing. We're building relationship and trust, we're building confidence, and then we're clearly laying out next steps and opportunities. Simple little switch in that. It's not all about lunches and things of that nature, or golf matches. It's laying out clear expectations, because usually what happens is later on in the process, you typically don't have a single decision maker, right? It's a multi-person decision group. So how do you explain your value chain or differentiation to a pool of people besides the dude or gal you've been golfing with? And that's a very important piece here. That's the old Bobby knows those people really well. We're going to get the deal. And then they're like, they went with whatever XYZ firm. Like, how the hell we not got that? Well, you were focused too much on an individual, one single when the decision making committee. This is classic in onboarding nonprofits, like literally like where it's boards, the boards pick. I'm on quite a few boards my personal self, and if they're looking at moving accounting firms, I mean it's very interesting what is said when none of you are in the room, and what is said wrong about you when none of you are in the room. And I'll show you how, by using our tool set, it's having that virtual rep in the room, because it's a digital version of your firm, so that you are present in those critical decision making moments. And so this is all intertwined into that digital experience of selling and building that consensus, sharing your differentiation, and of course getting them over the line, right? Because ultimately, um, and of course you can speed up stuff, and there's all sorts of, I'm giving you real numbers from experiences and outcomes, right? And sometimes they're very low, they can be even more depending on where you're at in your firm. um so this is kind of that what we would call the risky handoff, I refer to it to HO all the time. So you got your sales piece, and then of course you know what's coming next, the onboarding piece, because we're combining everything into one ecosystem. It's having that unified brief and centralized handoff process from the client. So let's say you're selling Tiffany, the CFO of a firm, and you've had a great relationship with her. You've been selling her with our mutual plan, value statements, all these kinds of things. Her board has just approved moving to your firm. You now are logically going to start to shift some of the relationships here, because a lot of times it's a one-to-one or a one-to-three relationship. Sometimes we have the accounting firms are bringing in SMEs or practice experts in during the sales process. So if the client's needs are insurance, individual, I'm just help me, you know what I'm getting at. So that ecosystem, you might be bringing SMEs into the subject matter experts, or practice leaders or other concepts or naming you want to use, those people into the sales process. So you're building more trust and relationship here. But more than likely in B2B transactions, you're going to be bringing in other staff members, admin on your side or other folks on your side. And same thing, the CFO really isn't going to be involved with it. You're going to have a controller or VP of accounting or other folks in there. So there's a high risk point here when you're transferring relationships and bringing in other relationships into the fold and making sure they don't feel like they're reinventing the wheel. So centralizing all of this stuff is very, very important. And we have found, and this is really nothing, I shouldn't say nothing to do with accounting, but honestly, in our SaaS clients and many of our verticals, what we really see is happening is though your person, the admin person, or whoever's going to be leading the deal being closed and or the onboarding, is they are injected into the relationship when you start to feel like in the sales process you're at 75% or 80%. Pick a number that makes sense for your firm. Everybody does a little bit differently, but I think the point of my statement is you inject that relationship earlier rather than later, so that there's more trust. They get more global knowledge around the client, right? They feel more friendly with the client, feel like they can, it's mutual, right? We see a lot more success. So you got to pick the number that makes sense. You don't want to be wasting your team's time, but it really greatly improves the handoff process, the cultural maybe differences between the firms or relationships that are there, right? Like done right, and it's not hard to do right. They just got to get into the mix. You ramp them up. It's going to really, really help that onboarding process too, to protect your house, protect the house is what we're always talking about, right? So that's a kind of a sneaker doodle that you literally can do right now on a lot of your things to improve those processes. All right. Um, Next one, I assume at some level you're doing this, but like you got to improve like the data collection process. Trust but verify. I don't know how many times we have clients that they ask clients for stuff. This client sends something back and no one looks at it for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they need to be doing something with it. And they're like, this isn't even the right documentation. This is old documentation. This isn't even the right entity or whatever, right? So you got to have good, secure, clearly processes where you're setting the expectation to the customer. They're able to upload stuff, obviously grouped in a manner that makes it easy for your team to process internally. Plus, you also got to trust but verify. So when something gets submitted, obviously automatic tasking internally to your team so that they go in and verify that it's right. Because if you're going to solve the problem, you need to solve it immediately, not towards the end when then everything starts to blow up because we don't have the right um, optimization, right? And so this is a big, this little area alone is a monster amount if not executed correctly, eating up time and massive frustration. Uh, excuse me, on the customer time, and I'll show you some examples. But at minimum, have that process very clear, automated, and yeah, just you know, flip the flip the roles. That's what I always say. It's not hard to set the expectation. If like yeah, just yeah, make it easy. Um, Communication and transparency. This is what I always talk about. If you have everything structured, mutual plans, obviously mutual plans for the onboarding process and actually onboarding, then you have complete visibility on how things are progressing, and automated communications, AI based reminders, bird dogging. Like you got to get everything organized in one house. As I said, email is not an onboarding or sales tool. um, and so getting everything in an environment that you can track things, especially if you have teams and you're doing obviously more than one of these. um, this one I kind of talked about the retention. So strategy 5, this is retention and cross sell. So there's a ton of use cases and I can share additional resources of this, especially in complex relationships like this where you're being tested, and then you're able to then obviously leverage that trust into cross-selling and upselling. And that's when you're profiling your client, when you're onboarding them, you're creating a profile. Many times you're interviewing the client, I assume, as an accounting lead or as a practice manager, you're interviewing your client. You're typically doing what I would assume is your top 10 risks to your enterprise right now, or top 5 risks to your enterprise now from their point of view. clearly priority one is maybe why they're coming to you, but then identifying priority two, three, and four. Obviously, if you need more intel for those priority two, three, and four, then in the onboarding experience, you might be collecting some of those data points to help you build that cross sell strategy, right? So they're all interconnected, and it's we help obviously our partners, meaning our clients, um, to weave these strategies, these proven cross sell, upsell, all this stuff into obviously the sale and onboarding experience, but centralizing all of that so you have the visibility and connectivity to that as you're taking them through your journey maps. Make sense, team? So there is a lot of thought process around it, and then obviously activation via the tool set, but ultimately you're getting multiple wins, not only on the net new revenue, but also managing your downside risk, obviously, by not having anything fail out there. So kind of the framework kind of around this strategy, of course, is going to be the people, right? Your processes, like we talked about, the milestones, the handoffs, just thinking through these. And we coach a lot of our clients around all of this. And then, of course, the platform to basically, obviously make this very, very efficient internally. And so, as I said, one of the things, just this is more, this is not a demo. You guys want a demo? That's my wife and kid and doggy. It's not what you were really supposed to be saying, but that's all right. Nice people. They're very nice people. Um, it's obviously a joke. Hope everybody's laughing. But so thinking about the end in mind, are obviously this is what our clients leverage out of us. So this is a private workspace. This would be your accounting firm here, and this would be the client that you're selling to or onboarding. And this is a secure, centralized workspace. And this basically drives the entire client experience, right? So this is a dashboard for the customer so they know what they need to be doing. Because again, you got to make it super simple for them to be successful. High level, again, this is just so you can think through it. Many of our clients do videos, meeting recaps, all sorts of things, all the things about your firm, all your marketing materials, if you want to. But discovery and alignment, this is that mutual plan of guiding the sales process. These are called mutual plans. I'll include additional resources. I do entire presentations on these, but it's basically abstracting out your sales process, creating the gates that are needed to qualify so you're not wasting time on looky-loos or window shoppers or whatever you want to call it, right? So you're trying to activate the high value clients this way. So this is alignment. Alignment has nothing to do with onboarding. This is the alignment piece of it. And there's many different ways we do this. For purposes of today, there's plenty. It's just more to give you kind of an idea. Of course, all of your services is here. Get to know your team and bios because everything's about trust building and your differentiation, your approach, your strategy, whatever it is. This is that virtual sales rep during that 80 to 90% when you're not in the room, when the other decision makers from the company are involved. This is great. Obviously, you have full visibility, analytics, reporting. Everything is automated. Again, not demo. You want a demo, just sign up and we'll get you one to walk it through. But I'm just trying to give you the philosophy of how this interconnected, seamless experience can really drive that value chain and manage your risk, right? And then you get into the actual onboarding process. And obviously, this is just a high level one, but like this is a common relationship building. You're going to do launch strategy, data collection, entity and ownership mapping. You get it. These are all the things. And these items are forward facing to the customer and also internal facing to your team, but they only see what they're supposed to see, right? But all the data collection, the validation, cleaning the data, everything happens here. This is your battle plan for success of getting them onboarded. Of course, our tool has libraries for all different client types and whatever it might be, right? But spiritually, this is kind of the approach that we know wins, hardcore wins. And then the other point that is very important for all of our clients is kind of this post-launch strategy because there's still a lot of risk of kind of around that. Oh, I didn't launch the plan here, but basically another checklist process for that here, and then also the survey. So the riskiest point for you is after you provide your initial services, it's that um, it depends on what services. So bear with me here. Typically, this lies in the 90 to 120 cycle. So what happens is the typical firm onboards a client. And they're like, hell yeah, everybody celebrate, go downstairs, have a beer with the team, and we're kind of like they're onboarded, so we're done. The reality is it's just the start. And so we're very critical, and not in a negative way, but we're critical that that's not the end. The It really starts then from there hyper visibility on how the client is doing for those initial services you're providing, because you're looking for a quick win, you're looking for a wow moment, right? And then you're also looking for cross-selling and net new revenue, right? So you want to have high relationship even after the post they're onboarded, which is very, very important. We call it the tiger team approach. If yeah, tiger team, if you remember, some of you, like the Apollo missions, it's um a bunch of smart experts watching the client, making sure things are looking good. So if they, plus this would be where you can start to link in your cross sell ideas. There's a lot of fun things you can do here, but it keeps you connected to the client and for candid and open conversations, right? Like that's a real important part of all this is you can still have a meaningful relationship. And so the original, if you have a separate sales rep, they might still be involved, the partners involved, maybe SME, the onboarding person, like it's a little fake, not fake bad, it's their little tiger team. And so you're making sure that they're starting off on the right foot, because any little thing, a tagline we use is, of course, only you can prevent fires. You guys all know, if you want to get the smoke before it becomes flame, and that's kind of how we do that through this platform. Also, of course, this is also used for cross-selling later on and looping through this entire cycle again, because that's ultimately what you're doing. But I did want to just share, these are all the people, this is your client, this is your team, all of this is what is done inside our secure workspaces. So I just wanted to share that because it brings to life. I don't care what tool you're using. I recommend ours, world class at what we do, but whatever. It's more about taking the philosophy and being able to then drive that to success on your team. All right. So some important things there. That fully connected experience is really where the revenue, you're managing your onboarding risks and driving it from there. So some key takeaways, it's obviously about shortening the sales cycle through qualification and alignment. Obviously, you guys can read, I don't have to quote everything, but ultimately it's that one consistent experience from qualified to closed to onboarded to growth, right? And that's really what we help our clients with, whether that's from a technical perspective, but then also just straight up from a coaching perspective. So one of the things I make available to everybody, like I said, I've been at this 25 years, um, is alignment sessions with me. Just if you're like, how would that work in our firm? Because I don't see how that can be. 15-minute call. I'll walk you through different additional use cases, ask you a few questions clearly to better understand your firm or the complexity around that. We work with all different sizes of firms, obviously international big groups all the way down to very small groups. So it's really not about the size of the firm. It's more about the commitment to handling the sale, the handoff, and revenue generation in a cohesive experience. Of course, we integrate with a ton of tools to make this simple on your side, but I appreciate everybody's opportunity. If you have any immediate questions or something you want me to answer, just pipe it into the comments here. After the session is done, I can get back to you on anything on that front. But my takeaways, I'll share the webinar, share the recording, share the deck. I'll share 2 additional resources that I think are very complementary to this and help kind of connect the dots for you as you might now be trying to figure out, how do we go on the offensive on selling, improving our partner engagement, obviously with relationships, also obviously the onboarding side. So again, appreciate everybody's time, and yeah, check out our website in general, proteus.co. Tons of resources, tons of webinars. Go out there with a lot of value around all of these key points. Sometimes I recommend doing that too, because you're learning not in the accounting space, like what we call R&D, rip off and duplicating from other industries, because there are different techniques and styles that frequently can be pulled into your environment. So again, appreciate the time, everybody. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.